The mining outpost on planet Carinine rested in a shallow valley surrounded by silver-gray cliffs. Each morning, the mist rolled down from the ridges and covered the metal domes like a soft blanket. It was peaceful, quiet, and almost too calm for a place so far from any central system. Inside the habitat dome, Rian tightened a valve on the main coolant line. He had worked at Outpost Kara for 3 years. The job was hard, but he liked it because it was honest work. He repaired broken machines, checked the reactor core, and kept the oxygen filters running. He did not speak much, but everyone respected him. When he smiled, it was rare but genuine. On that morning, the outpost had just begun its daily cycle. The miners were preparing for another long day underground. A few children played near the lower courtyard, where the artificial lights made the air shimmer. The place smelled of iron and dust. Nothing seemed unusual. Then the warning siren cut through the calm. Rian froze. The sound was sharp, mechanical, and urgent. It was not the usual maintenance alert. It was a red alarm. He turned toward the outer wall monitor. The screen flashed a signal from the radar tower. Objects were entering the atmosphere at high speed. They were not human ships. Rian dropped his tools and ran toward the main corridor. As he passed through the hall, he saw people rushing to shelters. A voice echoed over the speakers. All civilians report to Sector 3 shelters. All personnel to defense posts. The attack came without warning. The sky outside the transparent dome glowed orange as fire streaked downward. Ships like black knives cut through the clouds. They were the Vern, a race known for raiding isolated human settlements. They wanted or technology, and sometimes captives. Rian reached the control hub, where the engineers tried to stabilize the power lines. Sparks burst from a panel as a plasma surge hit the shield generator. The outpost trembled. He shouted, "Seal the east gates! Shut down external links before they overload." 2 workers ran to obey, but then the floor shook again. A blast wave tore through the far side of the dome. The wall cracked, and the emergency doors tried to close, but jammed halfway. Rian grabbed a repair kit and rushed toward the damage. Through the smoke, he saw a small group of civilians trapped on the other side of the half-closed door. Among them was a little girl, no older than 9, clutching a small toy drone. Her eyes were wide with fear. Rian called out, "Get back!" "I'll fix it." He crawled under the bent frame and worked to reconnect the hydraulic lock. The heat was intense, and pieces of metal rained from the ceiling. The girl's mother was nowhere in sight. Someone shouted that she had gone outside earlier with the mining patrol. The aliens were closing in fast. Their ships landed near the ridge, and figures in dark armor moved through the dust. The outpost guards opened fire, but the Vern had stronger weapons. Rian's hands moved quickly. He cut the twisted pipe and replaced it with a temporary seal. The emergency door started to close again. Before it did, he pulled the girl to safety and pushed the others inside the shelter tunnel. A shockwave hit the wall, throwing him backward. The light panels exploded. Rian's suit protected him from the flames, but the force burned his shoulder. He coughed and pushed himself up. Then he saw them. 3 Vern warriors had breached the outer wall. Their armor shimmered with blue light, and their weapons crackled with energy. They were taller than humans and moved like machines. The civilians screamed and ran deeper into the tunnel. Rian stood between them and the attackers. He had no real weapon, only a plasma cutter. It was designed to melt metal, not fight soldiers. Still, he turned it on. The beam glowed bright white in his hand. The first alien raised its weapon. A bolt of energy slammed into the floor near Rian's feet, sending sparks everywhere. He didn't move back. Instead, he stepped forward and swung the cutter in a wide arc. The blade of light struck the alien's shoulder and cut through part of its armor. The creature roared and stumbled. Rian knew he could not win a fight like this, but he needed to buy time. Behind him, he heard the sound of the emergency doors trying to seal. The civilians would be safe if he could hold the line for a few more seconds. The second alien fired, hitting Rian's side. His shield belt flickered, but held. He gritted his teeth and lunged forward again. He jabbed the plasma beam into the nearest control console, causing a burst of electricity that filled the hall with light. The aliens shielded their eyes. The emergency door closed with a heavy thud. The civilians were safe. Rian turned back just as another bolt hit him square in the chest. His armor smoked, and he fell to one knee. He could feel the heat burning his skin under the suit. He raised the cutter again, even though his hands trembled. The aliens stepped back, confused by the humans' refusal to fall. One of them fired again, and Rian took the hit across his arm. The beam scorched through the armor, leaving a black mark. But he still stood. Inside the shelter, the girl named Mira looked through a small gap in the door. She saw Rian standing alone in the firelight. She whispered, "He's not running. Mama will find him, right?" The guards finally arrived from the other side of the corridor with pulse rifles. They opened fire, forcing the aliens to retreat. 2 of the raiders fell, and the 3rd ran back toward the breach. Rian collapsed to the floor, smoke rising from his armor. The guards reached him and dragged him to safety. One of them said, "He's alive. Get him to the medbay now." Rian's vision blurred. He heard distant voices, alarms, and the sound of the shield doors locking. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the little girl's face as she cried, and whispered something he couldn't hear. When he woke hours later, he was in the medical ward. His chest was bandaged, and the pain in his shoulder pulsed with every breath. A medic leaned over him and said softly, "You're lucky. Most people would have died from those burns." Rian tried to sit up, but the medic stopped him. "You need rest," she said. "The commander will want to talk when she arrives." He blinked in confusion. "Commander?" "Yes, the girl's mother. She's leading the relief team. They say she was out hunting the Vern when she got the signal." "She's coming here." Rian nodded weakly and closed his eyes. His body felt heavy, but his mind was still sharp. He remembered the faces of the people he had protected. He wondered if the girl was safe. That thought alone helped him ignore the pain. Outside, the outpost was quiet again. Smoke still rose from the walls, and workers tried to rebuild what they could. The attack had lasted less than an hour, but it had changed everything. At dawn, a transport ship descended through the clouds. It was a sleek silver craft with the mark of the Human Defense Fleet. From it stepped Tara, commander of the 12th Patrol Division. She was tall, steady, and her uniform bore the scars of many battles. She moved with purpose, her eyes scanning every corner of the damaged base. When she entered the med bay, the air seemed to shift. The guards stood straighter. Tara's expression was calm, but inside her heart pounded. She had rushed here as soon as she received the message, "Civilians saved." 1 engineer down. Child unharmed. Her daughter Mira ran into her arms the moment she saw her. Tara held her tightly, feeling her small heartbeat against her chest. She whispered, "I'm here." "You're safe now." Mira pointed toward the bed where Rian rested. "Mama, he saved me." He didn't move even when they shot at him. Tara looked at the man on the bed. His face was pale, his hair burned at the edges, but his breathing was steady. She could see the bandages under his armor and the faint marks where fire had kissed his skin. She asked the medic quietly, "He really fought the Vern?" The medic nodded. "He held them off long enough for the civilians to reach the shelter. He didn't leave even when the shields failed." Tara's gaze softened. She stepped closer and looked down at Rian. In her years of command, she had seen soldiers fight bravely, but few had fought alone for strangers. She said softly, "You have done something great today, engineer." Rian did not wake, but his hand twitched slightly as if he heard her voice. Tara turned to her daughter. "He saved you, Mira. We owe him more than words." Mira nodded. "Can we help him get better?" "Yes," Tara said. "We will." As the sun rose over the cliffs of Caranine, the outpost began to breathe again. The people who had been hiding now stepped outside to help rebuild. The night of fear turned into a morning of hope. In the med bay, the hum of machines filled the silence. Rian slept peacefully, unaware that the choice he made to stand in front of a child and face an army had already begun to shape the future of not just the outpost, but of something much larger. Far above, the stars still glowed faintly in the light of dawn. watching over the man who took the blows meant for another. When morning light broke over Carinine, the mining outpost still smelled of smoke and metal. The battle had ended hours ago, yet the walls bore dark marks of heat, and the air carried the taste of burned steel. Small repair drones floated around, welding the cracked sections of the dome, while engineers moved quietly from one ruin to another. In the medical wing, Rion slept under soft white lights. The machines beside his bed beeped in a steady rhythm. His chest rose and fell slowly, showing that he was alive, though every breath seemed to cost him effort. His uniform had been cut apart by the medics. Layers of gel covered the burns on his arms and side. Outside the ward, Tara stood beside her daughter Mira, who held her mother's hand tightly. The commander's face was calm, but her eyes told a story of long years spent on the edges of war. She had led fleets, lost comrades, and seen the strength of humanity tested many times. Yet when she looked at the man on the bed, she felt something different. Her daughter had told her every detail while they waited for Rion to wake. Myra's words were soft, but full of admiration. "He stood there, Mama. The aliens shot fire at him, but he didn't move. I thought he would fall, but he kept standing. He saved us." Tara listened in silence. Her mind played the image again and again. A single engineer, no armor unit, no command, no backup. Just one man against a squad of Vern soldiers. The courage to stay in that fight came from a place deeper than duty. After making sure Mira had eaten, Tara stepped into the ward. The nurse saluted her, then quietly left the room. Tara sat beside the bed. The lights reflected on the transparent panels that surrounded them. And outside, she could see the pink horizon where the sun climbed over the cliffs. Rion stirred, opening his eyes. For a moment, confusion filled his face. He tried to rise, but the pain stopped him. Tara spoke softly. "Easy. You are safe now." He blinked at her, unsure who she was. "Commander?" he asked in a low voice. "Yes, I am Commander Tara of the fleet stationed near this sector. My daughter was among the civilians you protected." Rion's eyes softened when he heard that. "The little girl. Is she all right?" "She is safe because of you," Tara said. "You did not know her, yet you stood for her. That is rare." He tried to smile but winced instead. Someone had to hold the door. Tara looked at him carefully. There was no pride in his tone, only simple honesty. She had met many soldiers who spoke loudly about their bravery. Rion was not one of them. He had done what he believed was right and expected nothing in return. She placed a small card on the table beside his bed. "This is a field commendation. You are being recognized for saving civilians under attack. The fleet will honor you once you recover." Rion looked at the card without a word. He did not care for medals or ceremonies. His thoughts were already on the people who still needed repairs done. Tara stood and said, "Rest for now. You will need your strength." The Vern will not stay silent for long. When she left the room, she found Mira waiting in the corridor. The girl looked up eagerly. "Can I see him, Mama?" Tara nodded. Only for a short while, Myra tiptoed into the ward and stood near the bed. Rion smiled faintly when he saw her. "You must be the brave one who didn't cry," he said gently. Mira giggled. "I did cry. But you told me to run, and I did. Thank you for saving me." Rion reached out a weak hand and she placed her small fingers in his. "You're welcome," he said. The moment was quiet but powerful. For Tara, who watched from the doorway, it stirred something deep inside, a reminder that humanity's strength is not only in fleets or weapons, but in hearts that refuse to give up. Later that day, Tara walked through the outpost with her officers. They assessed the damage and discussed how to rebuild the shield wall. The engineers reported that the power lines were half destroyed. Supplies were limited. Yet despite the destruction, people worked with energy and hope. Tara noticed that they looked up to Rion even though he was still recovering. When they passed his name in conversation, their faces brightened. One miner said proudly, "He fought like 10 men. The aliens didn't know what hit them," another added. "He's no soldier, but he's got more courage than any of us." Hearing those words, Tara realized how much the outpost owed to that quiet engineer. He had not only saved lives, but also reignited something she had not seen for years, belief. As night approached, the air outside turned cold. The twin moons rose above the cliffs, covering the valley in silver light. Inside the dome, the lights dimmed to night mode. Tara sat in her temporary quarters, reading the last transmission from command. The message was clear. The Vern fleet had regrouped beyond the outer rim. Scouts believed they were preparing for another strike. Headquarters had advised evacuation of small outposts, including Kara-9. Tara frowned. To abandon the outposts meant giving up the ore that powered the defense grid of nearby colonies. It also meant leaving her daughter and the people who depended on her command. But orders were orders. Still, she remembered the look in Rian's eyes when he stood against the aliens. If one man could stand and fight for strangers, how could she walk away with a full fleet? The door to her quarters chimed. She allowed entry. Rian entered slowly, leaning on a support cane. His uniform was replaced by a plain recovery suit, but his steps were firm. Tara rose immediately. "You should not be walking yet," she said. "I needed to thank you," he replied. "For the treatment? For making sure the outpost stayed safe? You should thank yourself," she said. "You are the reason we still have people to protect." Shook his head. "Everyone here did their part. I only bought them a little time." Tara studied him. His humility only deepened her respect. "Still, what you did was beyond duty." Rian looked toward the window where the moon shone on the dome's cracked panels. Duty is not the reason people fight. Sometimes it's just about doing what feels right. There was silence for a moment. Tara saw that his words were true. She had led many soldiers who fought because they were ordered to, but Rian fought because he cared. She asked quietly, "Do you plan to stay on Kara-9? He nodded. "As long as there is work to do, I'll stay. The machines are damaged, and we need the ore to power nearby colonies. If we leave, the Vern will take it all." Tara considered his words carefully. "Command wants me to evacuate this place. They think we cannot defend it again." Rian looked at her. "Then we prove them wrong." His voice carried calm certainty, not arrogance. It was the tone of a man who had already faced the impossible once. Tara smiled slightly. "You sound like a commander. I'm only an engineer," he replied. "An engineer who stood against an army," she said. "Sometimes titles do not matter." Rian lowered his eyes modestly. "If you choose to stay, I'll help rebuild the defense grid. I know every wire in this dome." Tara's decision was made in that instant. "Then we stay. If the Vern come again, they will not find us unprepared." That night, work began across the outpost. Rian guided the repair teams, his calm voice giving directions even when exhaustion pulled at him. Tara organized the guards, turning miners into soldiers. The people followed her with renewed spirit, inspired by the engineer who refused to fall. Days passed. The outpost slowly came back to life. The power grid lit up again, brighter than before. The defense cannons were repositioned on the outer ridges. Mira often visited Rian, bringing him water or helping carry small tools. The two had become friends. And Tara saw in that friendship something pure, a connection built on courage and gratitude. One evening, after inspecting the rebuilt towers, Tara walked beside Rian near the main reactor. The glow of the energy core reflected off their faces. She said, "You have done more than enough. The fleet would welcome you if you ever wished to leave this place." Rian shook his head. "My place is here for now. I belong where I can make things work again." Tara admired his quiet strength. "The galaxy needs people like you, Rian, people who do not wait for orders to do what must be done." He looked at her and said, "The galaxy already has people like you, Commander. You came back when others might have turned away." For a moment, neither spoke. The low hum of the reactor filled the silence. Outside, the wind swept across the valley. It was a fragile peace, but it felt real. Then the alarm siren blared again, this time from the radar tower. Both turned toward the sound. The officer on duty shouted over the comms, multiple signatures approaching from orbit. "Vern ships detected. They are coming back." Tara's face hardened. She turned to Rian. "They didn't learn the first time." He answered calmly. "Then we teach them again." The commander's voice rang through the comm network. All stations to battle alert. Civilians to safe zones. Prepare the outer defenses. Myra was taken to the secure shelter, but this time she did not cry. She said to her mother, "He will stand again, Mama. I know he will." Tara nodded firmly. "And this time, we will stand with him." As the outpost lights turned red and the sky filled once more with fire streaks from descending ships, Rian and Tara stood side by side at the command deck. The storm was coming back, but humanity was ready to face it. In that moment, under the shadow of war, the bond between a mother, her daughter, and the man who had once taken the blows for them grew stronger than any wall of steel. The night sky above Carinine turned crimson as the alien ships entered the upper atmosphere. Their hulls glowed faintly from re-entry heat, spreading across the sky like streaks of burning steel. The people of the outpost had seen this sight before, and fear gripped many hearts. But this time they were not the same as before. Inside the command dome, Commander Tara stood in full uniform, her eyes fixed on the main display. The radar showed 20 incoming ships, larger than the last wave. The Vern were coming back, stronger and angrier. They had not expected resistance the first time. Now, they were here for revenge. Beside her stood Rian, dressed in a dark utility suit. He had only partly recovered from his injuries, but he refused to rest. His face was pale, yet his eyes were steady. The outpost depended on him again. He would not step away, the communications officer reported. They will reach low orbit in 6 minutes. No signal of negotiation. All weapons charged. Tara's voice was calm. Activate the ground shields and power up the defense grid. Prepare the surface cannons. Civilian shelters, locked down. The crew moved quickly. Red lights flashed across the corridors as alarms echoed through the dome. The people of Carinine ran to their posts. Many of them were miners, not soldiers, but they carried their weapons with determination. They had seen what one human could do against an army, and that memory now gave them courage. Rian moved to the engineering panel and checked the energy readings. The shield grid flickered for a moment and then stabilized. "All systems are ready, Commander," he said. Tara nodded. "Let them come." Outside, the wind howled across the valley as the first enemy ships broke through the clouds. Their engines roared, sending shock waves across the cliffs. The alien vessels hovered in formation, then began releasing smaller crafts. Each one carried armed Vern troops in heavy armor. The ground shook as they landed beyond the ridge. From the outpost walls, defense cannons opened fire. Bright energy bolts flew upward, striking the nearest dropships. 2 of them exploded before touching the ground. The battle had begun. Tara commanded the defenses with firm precision. Sector 1, keep firing. Sector 2, cover the western wall. Do not let them surround us. Her voice carried through every speaker in the outpost. She moved from console to console, guiding her people like a conductor leading an orchestra of survival. Rian remained at the power control hub, where a cluster of glowing panels displayed shield stability. Every hit from the alien weapons caused a flash of warning lights. He adjusted power flow, rerouting energy between damaged lines. Sweat rolled down his neck as he worked. A blast shook the dome. Sparks fell from the ceiling. One of the officers shouted, "Section 3 generator hit." Shields dropping in that zone. Rian grabbed his toolkit and ran. Tara saw him leave and called after him. "You are still hurt. Let the team handle it." He turned briefly. "They don't know the old wiring. I'll make it faster." Tara wanted to stop him, but she knew he was right. The outpost's systems were complex, and Rian had built many of the safety circuits himself. If anyone could fix it under fire, it was him. He reached Section 3 through a narrow tunnel that shook with every explosion. The air smelled of ozone and smoke. When he entered the generator room, he saw flames licking the walls. A power conduit had ruptured, sparking violently. He knelt beside it and started working, hands moving fast, despite the heat. The alarms screamed around him, but his mind focused only on the damaged circuit. He replaced a fuse coil, rewired a burnt line, and slammed the emergency seal shut. The shield lights brightened again in the command dome. Tara saw the readings stabilize. Relief crossed her face for a brief second. "Good work, Rion," she whispered, but the victory was short. A new sound thundered from the ridge, a deep, rhythmic pulse. The largest Vern ship had landed, and its front gate opened like the mouth of a beast. From it came armored figures carrying a siege cannon. Tara ordered all units to concentrate fire on the ridge, but the enemy weapon was too strong. The cannon fired a glowing projectile that hit the outer wall. The dome's metal surface rippled and burst, tearing a massive hole through one side. Air pressure dropped. Lights flickered. Warning sirens blared louder than before. The outer barrier of Sector 4 collapsed completely. Rion stumbled as the shockwave reached him. He heard Tara's voice through the intercom. "We lost Sector 4. Evacuate all non-combatants to the inner base," he replied. "I'm near the manual override. I can divert more power to shields." "Do it," Tara said. Outside the broken wall, the Vern soldiers advanced in tight formation. Their energy weapons flashed as they fired at human defenders. Tara grabbed her rifle and joined the front lines. She was not a commander who hid behind others. The troops followed her example and held their positions. The battle raged across the valley floor. Smoke filled the air. The ground was covered with craters from energy blasts. Yet through all the chaos, Rion worked without pause. He crawled through the maintenance shaft to access the power relay. Directly connected to the main reactor, he connected to heavy cables by hand, ignoring the sparks that burned his gloves. The lights across the base flickered, then steadied again. Shield strength rose by 20%. "Shield back online," Rian reported, panting. Tara smiled faintly through the coms. "You did it again, engineer." But as soon as she spoke, another tremor hit. The alien cannon fired once more, this time targeting the reactor itself. The impact threw Rion against the wall. He hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. The power room lights went out. The emergency systems switched to backup batteries. The main reactor was badly damaged. Rion coughed and pulled himself up. He checked the reactor panel. One of the cooling rods had melted, and the containment seal was failing. If it overheated, the whole dome could explode. He pressed the "Commander, we have a bigger problem." The reactor took a hit. "I need to shut it down manually or we lose everything," Tara answered immediately. "I'm sending a team." "No time," Rion said. "The heat levels are already critical. I can handle it." "Just keep them off the walls." Tara hesitated. "Rion, if the core breaches, then I won't be around to see it," he interrupted calmly. "But you and your daughter will be safe." Tara clenched her fists. She wanted to order him back, but she knew he would not listen. He was doing what he always did, standing where others would fall back. She turned to her troops. "Hold the line. No one lets them reach the reactor." Meanwhile, Rion climbed onto the upper deck of the reactor chamber. Heat waves distorted the air. The control screen flashed red warnings. He opened the manual override panel and began shutting down energy loops one by one. The ground trembled again. The Vern cannon fired at close range and part of the ceiling cracked. A large metal beam fell near him, sending shards of glass across the floor. Rion ducked, then continued working. The temperature readout dropped slightly. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Almost there." Through the observation window, he could see flashes of battle outside, the glow of plasma fire. The shadows of Tara's troops fighting back. Despite the danger, a deep calm filled him. He thought of Mira, the little girl who had looked at him with such trust. He thought of Tara, who had stood beside him in the storm. Those thoughts gave him strength. With one final motion, he pulled the reactor safety lever. The core stabilized, the alarms stopped, and the lights returned to normal. He slumped against the console, breathing hard. "Reactor safe," he said weakly into the com. Tara's voice came through, filled with relief. "Good work, Rion. You saved us again." But before he could respond, a massive explosion shook the building. The alien cannon had struck again, this time hitting the outer structure above him. Debris fell from the ceiling. He barely managed to roll aside as a steel panel crashed where he had been standing. Tara shouted over the radio, "Rion, get out of there." He struggled to his feet. I'm on my way. He ran toward the exit, but the main door was jammed. He used his cutter to slice through the frame, forcing it open. As he stepped into the corridor, the emergency lights flickered. The sound of footsteps echoed ahead. He raised his head and saw a group of Verne soldiers entering through the breach. They had found the reactor chamber. Rian grabbed a pulse pistol from the floor and took cover behind a console. He fired a few quick shots, forcing the aliens back. He knew he could not hold them for long, but every second counted. Through the radio, Tara called, "We are coming to you. Hold your position." The fight grew intense. Energy bolts slammed into the walls around him. One hit the console, sending sparks across the floor. The heat stung his face, but he kept firing. Minutes later, the door burst open again, and Tara entered with 2 soldiers. Their rifles blazed, cutting down the remaining attackers. She ran to Rian's side. "Are you hurt?" "Just tired," he said. "Reactor is safe. The base will hold." Tara helped him stand. For a moment, their eyes met. Around them, smoke and light filled the chamber, but they could still hear the distant cheers of human soldiers outside. The tide was turning. The remaining Verne ships began to retreat, unable to break the outpost's defenses. The humans had held once again. Tara pressed her communicator. "All units, status report." Replies came one after another. The outpost still stood as the last of the alien ships disappeared into the upper sky. Silence returned. The dome was damaged, but it was still standing. The people of Kara-9 had survived a second storm. The battle was over, but the silence that followed carried its own kind of weight. Smoke drifted through the valley of Kara-9. The ground was scarred from the alien bombardment. The outpost stood half in ruins. Yet it was still standing, and that was all that mattered. Rian walked slowly across the main hall, where broken panels and debris covered the floor. His arm was bandaged, and his uniform carried stains of soot and dust. Every step hurt, but he did not complain. Around him, people were cleaning, repairing, rebuilding. The survivors nodded at him as he passed, gratitude shining in their tired faces. He didn't feel like a hero. He was just glad they were alive. Commander Tara entered the hall behind him, her uniform torn and dusty. Her sharp eyes scanned the workers, checking every team's progress. Even after the victory, she stayed focused. Duty came before rest. She stopped near Rian and said softly, "You should be in the med bay. The doctor has been asking about you." He smiled faintly. "He already patched me up once today. I think he's had enough of me." She crossed her arms. "You nearly burned yourself alive in the reactor chamber. You should rest." He looked at her calmly. "The power systems won't rebuild themselves. If the next attack comes, we need to be ready." Tara sighed. "You always say that. One day you might run out of strength." He looked around at the workers repairing the walls and said, "Maybe, but not today." Her expression softened. She didn't argue further. Instead, she handed him a data slate. "The council from the main colony has sent a message. They want to speak to you?" "Me?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," Tara said. "You became something of a symbol after the battle. They saw the footage from the defense grid. They know what you did." He frowned slightly. "I didn't do it for recognition." "I know," Tara replied. "But symbols matter. People need hope right now." He took the slate, his brow furrowed. "I'm not much for speeches." "Then just tell the truth," she said. Later that evening, Rian stood in front of a holoscreen that projected the image of the council members. They were dressed in formal uniforms with the crest of the Human Expansion Authority on their shoulders. The central figure, a woman with silver-gray hair, spoke first. "Engineer Rian, we have reviewed the battle logs. Your actions prevented a reactor. Breach and ensured the survival of Kara-9. The council wishes to recognize your service." Rian shifted uncomfortably. "I was only doing my job." The woman smiled gently. "Doing your job saved hundreds of lives. You showed what it means to stand for humanity in the face of extinction. We will be sending additional troops and supplies. You will have command over all engineering systems during reconstruction." They nodded quietly. "Thank you, ma'am." The call ended and the screen faded to black. Tara approached from behind and said, "They trust you now." They trust anyone who survives long enough. Still, it means more resources. We can rebuild faster, she said. Rian looked out the cracked window. The sunset painted the desert in shades of red and gold. The outpost looked peaceful for the first time in weeks. Tara followed his gaze. The sky looks different after a battle, doesn't it? He nodded slowly. Maybe because we're still here to see it. For a moment, there was silence between them. The war had taken much from everyone, yet in that quiet space, they felt a strange calm. A child's voice broke the stillness. Mama Rian. It was Mira, running toward them. Her face was smudged with dust, but her smile was bright. She carried a small box filled with broken toy parts. Tara knelt down. Mira, you should be in the shelter. I wanted to show Rian, the girl said. My robot broke during the attack. Can you fix it? Rian smiled and knelt beside her. Let me see. He took the small metal toy and examined it. Its tiny gears were bent, and one arm was missing. It'll need a new joint piece, he said. Myra's eyes were wide with hope. Can you fix it? He nodded. Of course. He took a small tool from his belt and began working carefully. Tara watched as he focused on the tiny device, his rough hands moving with gentle precision. Within minutes, the toy's arm clicked back into place, and its little light eyes turned on again. Mira gasped in delight. It's alive. Rian smiled. Better than before, I think. She hugged the toy close and said thank you. Then she looked up at her mother. Mama, can we keep him here forever? Tara blinked in surprise, unsure what to say. Rian looked away with a faint smile, pretending not to hear. Mira, Tara said gently, Rian has important work to do. But he makes everything safe, Mira said stubbornly. And he fixes things fast. Tara smiled softly. Yes, he does. When the girl ran off to play near the med bay, Tara turned to Rian. You've made quite an impression. She's brave, Rian said. She reminds me why we fight. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Rian stood alone outside the dome. The cool wind brushed against his face. The ruins around him looked almost peaceful in the starlight. He thought about Earth, the home he had left behind long ago. It was far away, perhaps forever beyond reach. The war had scattered humans across the stars, and each colony now fought its own battles. But here on Caranine, he had found something more than a mission. He had found people who cared. Tara joined him quietly, standing beside him without speaking at first. They both looked at the sky, where faint trails of the retreating alien fleet still glowed. She finally said, You could leave, you know. The council would take you back to the central colonies. You'd have safety, comfort. He shook his head slowly. Not yet. The Vern will come again. You'll need every hand. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. You always choose the hard path, he smiled faintly. Maybe it's the only path that feels right. For a while, they said nothing. The silence between them wasn't empty, it carried an understanding that words couldn't reach. The following morning, the reconstruction began in full force. New supplies arrived from the orbiting station, and human engineers worked alongside alien allies from nearby settlements. The outpost slowly came back to life. Rian led the energy grid repairs while Tara oversaw the defense installation. Every day they worked side by side. They spoke little during the hours of labor, but their teamwork was natural. When one grew tired, the other stepped in. When one doubted, the other reminded them why they kept fighting. One afternoon, while inspecting the power conduits, Rian found something strange. The readings showed irregular energy spikes beneath the northern ridge. Far below the outpost's foundation, he called Tara over. Look at this, he said, showing her the scanner data. She frowned. That's too deep for surface activity. What could cause that? Either leftover alien tech or something buried long ago, Rian said. It's pulsing in intervals, almost like a signal. Tara studied the display. We can't ignore it. If it's a threat, we need to know. Prepare a small team. We'll check it out tonight. It's that evening, under the pale light of Kara's twin moons, Rian, Tara, and two soldiers descended into the underground tunnels. The air was cool and heavy with dust, Their lamps cut narrow paths of light through the darkness. The tunnel walls were ancient, filled with strange carvings that didn't belong to any known human or Vern culture. The deeper they went, the stronger the signal became. After an hour of walking, they reached a wide chamber. At its center stood a large black structure half buried in rock. It pulsed faintly with blue light. Rian approached carefully. It's not Vern technology. The design is too smooth, too symmetrical. Tara stepped closer, her eyes scanning the markings. What is it? Rian touched the surface gently. The light grew brighter. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the floor. Careful, Tara warned. But before he could step back, the structure came to life. A holographic image appeared above it, a map of the sector showing dozens of stars connected by glowing lines. At the center of the network was one bright point marked in red. Rian stared at it. That's the Vern home system. Tara's voice was low. Then this is not a weapon. It's an archive. The hologram shifted, showing strange symbols and data streams. Rian realized what he was seeing: records, coordinates, and transmissions in multiple languages. Some of them were human, others completely alien. This thing has been collecting signals for centuries, Rian said. Maybe even longer. It might hold the key to understanding the Vern. Ow. Tara's eyes widened. If that's true, it could change the war. They carefully recorded the data, storing it in Rian's portable device. As they prepared to leave, the structure pulsed one last time, sending a faint wave of energy through the ground. When they returned to the surface, dawn was breaking again. The light touched the cliffs, turning them gold and red. Rian handed Tara the data crystal. This could tell us why they keep coming. Maybe even how to stop them. She took it and looked at him. You keep finding hope in the most broken places. He smiled. Maybe that's my real job. As the outpost came alive with the new day, people moved with a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just survivors. They were seekers of truth. And at the center of it stood Rian and Tara, bound not only by battle, but by a shared promise to protect their home. Mira ran to them, holding her repaired toy, laughing as the wind lifted her hair. Tara watched her daughter and whispered, "She smiles again. That means we're winning." Rian nodded. Yes, but the real fight is just beginning. He looked toward the horizon, where the stars still shimmered faintly. Somewhere out there, beyond the dark sky, the Vern were preparing their next move. But now humanity asterisk. The days after the discovery of the underground archive changed everything for Outpost Caranine. The data Rian and Tara had recovered revealed the true purpose of the Vern attacks. They were not only seeking resources, they were hunting for something lost, something ancient, hidden within human territories long ago. Rian spent long hours studying the symbols and signals stored inside the archive. The records hinted at an ancient machine, a relic that could bend energy and matter. The Vern believed it had once belonged to them, but the archive showed otherwise. It was older than any known species. Tara stood beside him as the data scrolled across the screen. So they think we have their relic, she said quietly. Rian nodded. And they'll keep attacking until they find it. She looked at the glowing lines of the holographic map. Then we can't run. We have to end it here. He met her eyes. We'll need more than weapons to do that. Over the next few days, the outpost prepared for what they all knew would come. The Vern would return. And this time, they would not retreat. Engineers reinforced the shield domes. Soldiers built defense lines, and civilians helped carry supplies. Even the children were moved deep underground for safety. Everyone knew this could be their last stand, yet no one gave up. Rian worked non-stop, repairing the reactor, upgrading the shield emitters, and installing new pulse cannons. He was exhausted, but his determination never faded. Whenever his strength wavered, he thought of Mira's bright eyes and her laughter echoing through the halls. One evening, as the sky darkened and the wind howled through the valley, Tara found Rian on top of the central dome. He was tightening the antenna that linked their communication grid to the orbiting relay. "You haven't slept," she said. He smiled faintly. "Neither have you." She stepped beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. Scouts say the Vern ships are gathering beyond the outer ridge. Hundreds of them. He adjusted the last bolt. Then it begins. For a while they stood in silence, the cold wind brushing against their faces. The distant thunder of engines rumbled through the ground. Tara spoke softly. You could still leave with the transport fleet. The Council wants you alive. He shook his head. If I go, the defense grid will fail. The system needs constant manual adjustment once the fighting starts. Her voice tightened. You'll be trapped inside the core room when the attack begins. He met her gaze calmly. Someone has to hold the power lines stable. If the shields fall, everything falls. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his. You always put yourself between danger and everyone else. He looked out at the valley. Maybe that's just who I am. Tara wanted to argue, but she knew it would change nothing. He was stubborn, but his heart was pure. In that moment, she realized that Caranine's strength was not in its walls or weapons. It was in him. The next morning came with fire. The Vern fleet descended like a storm. The sky turned red and gold as plasma fire rained down. Alarms screamed across the base. Soldiers rushed to their positions. The air shook with the sound of explosions. Tara stood in the command tower, giving orders with steady precision. Sector 1, hold formation. Sector 2, reroute power to the east wall. Keep the civilians underground. Rian's voice came through the com channel, calm despite the chaos. Shield grid active. Power levels steady at 92%. The first wave hit hard. Vern fighters swarmed through the sky, firing bright arcs of energy that slammed into the outpost walls. The defense cannons roared back, cutting down several of them. But more came. Inside the control core, Rian's fingers moved quickly across the consoles. The power grid pulsed under his command. Every light, every cannon, every shield beam passed through his control. Sweat ran down his face, but he didn't stop. The ground shook as the Vern launched heavy walkers onto the surface. Massive machines with glowing armor advanced through the dust, firing plasma bolts that tore through the outer gates. Tara saw them through the screen. All units, concentrate fire on the walkers, she ordered. The defenders obeyed, their shots lighting up the valley. Still, the machines pressed forward. Mama, are we safe? Mira's voice came from the lower shelter. Tara closed her eyes for a second and answered softly, Yes, my love. Stay with the others. When she looked back at the battlefield, her resolve hardened. Rian, we're losing power at the western line. See it? He replied, rerouting energy through auxiliary conduits. I can stabilize it, but I'll need to cut main power for a few seconds. You can't, she said. That will drop the shields. It's the only way, he said firmly. Before she could reply, he had already done it. For 5 long seconds, the shield around the dome flickered and went dark. The alien ships fired immediately, but then the grid came back stronger than before. The blue light flaring around the outpost like a second sun. Grid restored, Rian said through heavy breathing. We're holding. Tara exhaled slowly. You did it again. But she knew he was pushing himself beyond his limits. Hours passed like minutes. The battle raged across the valley. The outpost shook under the constant bombardment. Smoke and dust filled the air. Then came the warning. A massive Vern flagship appeared above the clouds. It was larger than anything they had seen before, covered in spiked armor and glowing red lines. It began charging its main Kanona weapon, powerful enough to destroy the entire outpost in one shot. Rian looked up at the monitors. That's not just an assault ship. That's their command vessel. Tara's voice was steady but grim. If that cannon fires, everything ends. Rian stared at the energy readings. Wait, the archive signal it's reacting to the flagship's power surge. What does that mean? She asked. He typed rapidly. It means the archive can counter the blast if I link it directly to the reactor. It'll channel the energy into a controlled feedback loop. Tara's eyes widened. That's suicide. The energy could overload the entire core. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but it's the only chance we have. She gripped the edge of the console. You can't go alone. He met her gaze on the screen. You said once, I always put myself between danger and everyone else. This time, let me do it one last time for all of you. Before she could stop him, he cut the cum line and ran toward the underground chamber. The alarms blared louder as he entered the reactor room. Sparks fell from the ceiling, and the hum of power filled the air. He moved to the central panel and activated the link between the reactor and the ancient archive. The walls glowed blue. The hum grew stronger until it was almost deafening outside. The Verne flagship's cannon began to glow with white-hot energy. Tara ran toward the reactor chamber, her voice echoing through the halls. Rian, answer me. He looked up at the security camera and smiled faintly. Take care of them, Tara. Tell Mira I said thank you. She reached the door just as it locked with a magnetic seal. Rian, please, she said, pounding on the metal. You don't have to do this. He placed his hand on the glass window, his eyes calm and steady. We all have something worth protecting. Then he turned and pressed the final command. A bright wave of energy burst through the core, racing upward into the sky. The archive structure below the outpost activated, its blue light spiraling around the base like a shield of stars. The Verne cannon fired at that exact moment. A massive beam of white light descended from the heavens, but when it struck the outpost, it did not destroy it. Instead, the archive absorbed the energy and sent it back toward the Verne fleet. The explosion that followed lit up the sky for miles. The flagship broke apart. The remaining alien ships scattered into the darkness. The blast wave rippled across the valley, shaking the cliffs and sending dust into the air. Then silence. The outpost still stood. The shield flickered one last time before fading away. Tara forced the reactor door open and ran inside. The room was filled with smoke and light. The main console was cracked, and sparks rained from the ceiling. She called out, her voice breaking, Rian. There was no answer at first. Then she saw him, lying near the center platform. His armor was scorched, and his breathing was shallow. She rushed to his side and held him up. You did it, she whispered. You saved us. He opened his eyes weakly. Is everyone safe? Yes, she said. The Verne are gone. He smiled faintly. Then it was worth it. Myra's voice came from the doorway. Mama Tara turned. The girl ran forward and knelt beside Rian, her small hands trembling. You can rest now. You don't have to fight anymore. Rian looked at her and smiled. Keep that smile, Mira. It's brighter than any star. His hand fell slowly to his side. The hum of the reactor faded to silence. Tara held him close, tears running down her face. Outside, the dawn broke over the horizon, painting the valley in golden light. In the days that followed, Kara 9 became a symbol of hope for all human colonies. The story of the engineer who stood alone against the storm spread across the stars. They built a monument where the reactor once stood, a tall spire of silver and glass. Engraved with simple words, he took the blows for us all. Tara and Mira often visited the monument. The girl would place her repaired toy robot at the base each time. One evening, as the wind blew softly across the valley, Myra asked, Mama, do you think he can still see us? Tara smiled gently. Yes, I believe he can. And as long as we remember him, he'll never be gone. The stars above shone brighter that night, as if the universe itself remembered the man.